Welcome to episode 30 of Motivating Mondays, a weekly podcast and YouTube series dedicated to help Canadian job developers and other employer engagement professionals develop the tools, resources, expertise, and network to excel in achieving sustainable employment outcomes for their clients or students. My name is Christian St. Cyr, National Director of the Canadian Job Development Network, and today we're partially looking at some of the challenges that youth face in our job market, but our main thought is about this generation which will inherit the entire job market, and are we effectively preparing for this eventual outcome? When I turned 20, as a member of Generation X, society didn't think too much about youth. We were in the middle of the grunge period with bands like Nirvana questioning the blatant commercialization of previous generations. Young people questioned the integrity of institutions and felt the world had abandoned our future for profit and progress. I personally witnessed what previous generations had experienced and what future generations would experience in the years to come. After Gen X traded their grunge wear for minivans, the next generation that was picked on was the millennials, something that I listened to employers harp about for a couple of decades. The complaints against millennials wasn't too different than the complaints we get these days about Gen Z. They weren't responsible, they didn't want to work, they spent too much time on technology, they couldn't be counted on, and they were the product of helicopter parenting. These are all pretty familiar complaints. They've been around for decades. I'll bring your attention to a television show from the 1970s called All in the Family. In the pilot episode, the father, Archie, meets his future son-in-law, Michael, and after hearing his lefty thoughts on politics and social justice and the inherent unfairness of society, he declares that Michael is a meathead.
Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Stivic. You are a meathead. A meathead, dead from the neck up. Meathead.
Michael was a baby boomer. So what happened to those baby boomers? Well, just 15 years later, we see another baby boomer, played by Michael Douglas, portraying Gordon Gekko in the film Wall Street, proclaiming,
"Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms."
Well, as we all know, that worked out really great. It's unfair to judge an entire generation by its first entry into the labor market. To be honest, Gen Z is facing some significant hurdles, but also possess tremendous potential that will transform the labor market for all of us. And if I may be so bold, one day it'll be a member of Gen Z who determines whether you get to continue to drive your car or what sort of care home you end up living in. That member of Gen Z might be a family member or a doctor or a politician or even a worker at the motor vehicle office who looks up from whatever the 2055 version of TikTok is to evaluate whether you've passed your cognitive test. There's a lesson here for employers. But before we get into that, let's take a look at how Gen Z is facing in the job market right here in the year 2025. According to the most recent labor force survey, youth are facing the worst job market in decades, paralleling what would typically be recession-level unemployment numbers. Youth unemployment in Canada has worsened since 2022, with overall youth unemployment rising from 10% that year to 14% by the year 2025. It gets worse. In Ontario, the unemployment rate for young women is more than 17%, and the unemployment rate for young men is more than 18%. These levels of unemployment are pushing more and more youth into app-based gig occupations, often lacking employment standards, employment insurance, workers' compensation, minimum shifts, and most importantly, the basic mentorship that shapes future employment. According to Statistics Canada, more than 40% of self-employed youth were in gig occupations, as compared to just 26% of self-employed core-aged workers 25 to 54. Now, before you say, oh, well, this is what every previous generation has experienced, and it should be noted that things are getting appreciably worse. In the first 5 years of work, baby boomers, way back in the 60s and 70s, typically had a tenure with an employer of 2.9 years in their first 5 years of working. For Gen X, this dropped to about 2.8 years, the average tenure in the first 5 years of working. For millennials, this dropped to just 1.8 years. And now with the average Gen Z worker, we're seeing barely 1.1 years of tenure with the typical employer within the first 5 years of employment. Recently, Randstad published a report looking at Canadian Gen Z titled "The Gen Z Workplace Blueprint Future-Focused, Fast-Moving." And this report found that Gen Z is ambitious, they're capable, but they're struggling to find their foothold. They enter the world of work at a time of disruption, despite rising talent scarcity. Their research, Randstad's research, shows that there is a steady decline in entry-level roles across all sectors. Young workers are facing higher competition, technological change, and uncertain growth paths. The report notes that with AI and digital automation handling many of the traditional junior tasks, the very nature of entry-level work is being reconfigured. An analysis of job postings reveals that for entry-level roles, those requiring 0 to 2 years of experience, the total number of those jobs has dropped 29, almost 30 percentage points. Not in the last decade, not in the last 5 years, but just since January 2024. This has hit Gen Z hard. When a public survey was conducted by Randstad, respondents were asked whether they agree with the following statement: "I don't feel like I have the confidence to find another job." Just 29% of baby boomers agreed with this statement. It was 36% of Gen Xers, 39% of millennials, but over 41%, more than 2 out of every 5 members of Gen Z said, "I don't feel like I have the confidence to find another job." Gen Z recognizes that they have skills. There's no lack of confidence there, but they're uncertain about the future. They report high confidence in their ability to learn job-related skills, 79%, 4 out of 5, yet they remain the generation most likely to be rejected for not having those skills. Despite their digital fluency, 46% are worried about AI's impact on their careers, which is up from 40% just last year, revealing a growing sense of unease beneath the surface. Canada is also trailing other world nations. 83% of Gen Z workers in India use AI to problem solve at work. In Brazil, it's 74%. In Spain, it's 64%. How do we do here in Canada? Only 48% of youth in Canada use AI to problem solve at work. It's just 44% in the United States and 42% in Japan, and we are at the bottom of the list. Without question, Gen Z is prepared to do the work when given an opportunity. 75% of Gen Z said that they learn through AI tools, as opposed to just 71% of millennials, 56% of Gen X, and less than half of baby boomers, 49%, say that they learn through AI tools. Randstad also argues that economic volatility, declining entry-level opportunities, and the impact of AI on skills profiles have not necessarily dampened Gen Z's appetite to advance in their jobs. Career progression is one of the top 3 factors for their long-term retention, along with better pay and flexible working hours. These are the big values that are important to Gen Z. Gen Z respondents were more likely, 41%, to always consider long-term career goals when making job change decisions compared to other generations. They are thinking about these things more. Randstad is sending out a warning to employers. This is how they put it. According to the authors, Gen Z's short-term job tenures aren't a trend. They are a warning sign. Amid shrinking talent pools, this generation is most likely to leave early, driven by unmet expectations and unclear career paths. Their research shows that Gen Z is gravitating towards fast-growth tech sectors such as IT, healthcare, and financial services to achieve those long-term career goals that they consider to be very important. This could leave entire sectors scrambling to find the workers that they need and struggling to remain competitive when they've failed to effectively recruit Gen Z workers. The tech sector in particular is a primary destination for this generation. Even if they start their careers elsewhere, tech-aligned industries are the top destination for Gen Z talent. They have a net gain of 70%, indicating that for every 100 workers in Gen Z who leave other industries, 70 will move to tech roles. In their final summary, Randstad puts it clearly: in the face of conflicting and contrasting perceptions of the working world, employers will need to make a strategic shift if they are to attract and retain Gen Z talent and shape the leaders of tomorrow. With the exception of those who work exclusively with mature workers, everyone who is watching this video right now works with youth. They may not end up being your primary population, possibly because youth just don't engage in employment services in the same manner as older workers, but we find youth in every population, including newcomers, women, Indigenous Canadians, those with disabilities, Francophones, racialized Canadians, LGBTQ2S+, and survivors of violence or abuse. Just as with employment services, as the sector needs to be better at finding opportunities to work with youth, we also need to support employers in better engaging youth. If we use a sales comparison, much of sales is built around addressing objections. That product or that service is too expensive, it's not the right color, it's not going to be available in time. Whatever the customer's objection is, a salesperson has to be able to provide a counter to that objection. We need to be able to be better at addressing employers' objections. So why do employers tell you that they don't want to hire youth? Is it possibly because they feel that youth are too entitled, or that they don't want to work, or they can't relate to them or their customers? Is it because they don't want to hire someone who's reliable and will stay with the organization? Or is it because they want to hire someone who's ready to go on day one and doesn't need any sort of training? Now, these are all valid and separate concerns, and they need to be addressed separately. When employers have a poor impression of youth, we need to prepare our clients or students ahead of time to be able to speak to employer expectations. We need to create opportunities for information interviews and elevator pitches and job fairs where young people can argue their own case. For employers who doubt the longevity of young employees, that they will stay with them for a long time, we need them to consider how long the average employee stays with any organization. Removing the outliers, the people who've been with an organization for years and decades, and removing the people who typically leave after 2 or 3 months, what is the average employee? What does the median employee stay with a typical organization? Is it a year? Is it a year and a half? Is it 2 years? And then we need to be able to argue that our young clients or students will definitely stay with them for that amount of time. That's a reasonable amount of tenure, maybe longer. For employers who don't want to invest the time in training young people, we need to remind them that hiring and recruiting takes a long time too. Workers who are ready to go on day one are what every other employer in town wants as well. And they will be the ones most likely to job hop for better pay or better benefits or opportunities for advancements. Talk about a sense of entitlement. Giving employers tough messages is the hardest thing job developers need to do. But sometimes we need to be able to say in the most polite, the most professional manner possible, how is this working for you? We need to remind employers that unless they are willing to think more inclusively, unless they're willing to take a chance on someone, that they're going to continue to be mired in the same recruitment mud that made them reach out to you in the first place. Now, I could make a grandstanding statement like how employers have abrogated their responsibility to hire and train the next generation of workers, which, by the way, is true. Employers have given up their responsibility in this area. But frankly, saying it isn't really that helpful. When it comes right down to it, diverse workplaces are stronger. They retain more staff, they enjoy more stability, and thereby enjoy better profits and better growth. That needs to be our message to employers. Diversity is good business, and hiring young people, the workers of tomorrow, is critical to the future growth of any employer in Canada. Reminder, the 20% discount on attending the Labour Market Year in Review workshops, respectively in British Columbia and Ontario, taking place in late November and early December, ends this November 14th. So if you want to get that 20% discount on your registration, remember to register, go to the website to register before November 14th. If you're in British Columbia, the website is labormarketonline.com/LMI workshop. In Ontario, the website is ontariolabormarketonline.org/LMI workshop. By the way, if you are situated in British Columbia or Ontario, how do you go about doing labor market research? You know, when we created the BC Labor Market Report way back in 1999, or the Ontario Labor Market Report back in 2014, It has become a resource used by thousands of career professionals. Both were created to provide career professionals with a comprehensive understanding of the current labor market. They help save time, provide better information, and ensure that individuals go on to more sustainable employment outcomes. Now, if your organization is situated in BC or Ontario and isn't a member of Labor Market Online, we actually have a really great special. Up until the end of this month, October 31st, we're waiving the onboarding fee for any organization that wants to join, possibly saving hundreds of dollars. If you want to learn more about either resource, to learn about British Columbia, go to labormarketonline.com/membership, or about Ontario, go to ontariolabormarketonline.org/membership. In either case, just let us know before Friday, October 31st. Thank you so much for joining us. Please click the like or subscribe button in your platform. Search for Motivating Monday wherever you download podcasts. We'd also like it if you could rate or review our YouTube channel or the podcast. Now, we do these sessions live and for free every Monday morning on Microsoft Teams with job developers and employer engagement professionals from all across Canada. It'd be so great if you could join us. Just go to jobdevelopment.org to learn more. If you have any questions, you can send me an email directly, cstcyr@labormarketsolutions.ca. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your time and have an amazing week.